Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
The letter of intent arrived via courier at 9 o'clock in the morning on a rainy Tuesday. It was signed by every single member of my family except me. My hands trembled as I read the legal document demanding I transfer ownership of my converted penthouse to the family trust within 30 days. The letter claimed my late grandfather's will contained a clause giving the family first rights to any property improvements exceeding original value by 2,000%. I stared through the rain-streaked windows of the penthouse I had spent 3 years transforming from a condemned rooftop structure, realizing my own blood relatives were attempting to steal my life's work. 4 years ago, I was Christopher Williams, a 24-year-old mechanical engineer fresh out of Oregon State University with big dreams and limited resources. My grandmother Helen had passed away 6 months earlier, leaving me $180,000 that she had carefully saved throughout her lifetime. The inheritance came with a handwritten note tucked inside the bank envelope. Christopher, you're the only one in this family who builds things instead of just taking them. Make something beautiful. Those words echoed in my mind as I searched Portland's brutal housing market with my real estate agent, Sharon Peterson. Every decent property was either overpriced or required cash offers well beyond my budget. That's when Sharon suggested something unusual. I have one listing that's been sitting for 8 months, she said, pulling up photos on her tablet. It's technically listed as a penthouse, but honestly, Christopher, it's more like a disaster zone with a view. The address was downtown Portland in a 1920s brick building that had seen better decades. When Sharon unlocked the rooftop access door and led me up a narrow staircase, I immediately understood why the property hadn't sold. The space was absolutely horrifying. Rotting wooden floors sagged under our feet with each step. Exposed electrical wires hung like deadly snakes from water-stained ceiling beams. Pigeon droppings covered every surface in thick white layers that crunched under our shoes. The smell hit you like a physical wall of decay mold and animal waste that made my eyes water. The seller is Mrs. Gladys Hoffman, Sharon explained, covering her nose with her sleeve. She's 92 and inherited this building from her husband. She's been trying to sell this unit for years just to get it off her books. Despite the horrific conditions, something stirred in my engineer's brain as I looked around. The bones of the structure were solid 1920s construction. Steel beams ran through load-bearing walls that could support significant renovation. Most importantly, the panoramic view through grimy windows showed the entire Portland skyline, the Willamette River, and Mount Hood in the distance. "What's she asking?" I inquired, already calculating possibilities. "160,000, Sharon replied, which honestly might still be too much for what you're getting. I made the offer that afternoon. 3 weeks later, I brought my family to our traditional Sunday barbecue at my parents' house in Beaverton to announce my purchase. The reaction was exactly what I had feared. My father, Robert, a 58-year-old insurance adjuster with a perpetual frown, actually laughed out loud when I described the property. "Christopher's folly," he declared, taking a long swig of his beer. "Son, you just bought the most expensive storage shed in Portland?" My mother, Patricia, who worked as a bank teller and prided herself on financial conservatism, shook her head with obvious disappointment. "Sweetie, you could have put that money toward a nice condo in the suburbs, something move-in ready that would hold its value." My older brother Daniel, a 30-year-old attorney at a prestigious downtown firm, smirked while flipping burgers on the grill. "Let me guess you think you're going to flip this place and make millions. Christopher, you're an engineer, not a contractor. You bought a glorified storage shed for the price of a decent car." My sister Amanda, 26, and already successful in real estate investment, was even more blunt. "That's honestly the stupidest investment decision in family history. You should have consulted with me first. I could have found you 3 rental properties in that price range that would actually generate income. But the harshest rejection came from my Uncle Frank, my father's brother, who owned a mid-sized construction company. When I asked if he might help with the renovation, he didn't even look up from his plate. "I won't waste my crew's time on that disaster," Frank stated flatly. "Christopher, that building should be condemned, not renovated. You threw away your grandmother's life savings on a pipe dream." Despite their unanimous discouragement, I saw something they couldn't. The space had incredible potential 1,200 square feet of panoramic city views in a location that was rapidly appreciating as downtown Portland gentrified. The structural elements were sound enough to support major renovation. Most importantly, I had the engineering background to tackle challenges that would intimidate typical homeowners. 2 months later, I quit my engineering job at a local manufacturing company and committed myself full-time to the transformation. But as I signed the final purchase papers in Sharon's office, she mentioned something that sent a chill down my spine. "Funny coincidence," Sharon said casually while organizing documents. "Your grandfather Marcus actually inquired about this exact property about 6 months before he passed away. He came up here, looked around, asked lots of questions about structural possibilities. Never made an offer, though. I figured it was just an odd coincidence when you showed interest." I drove home that day with an uncomfortable feeling that this was no coincidence at all. With my family's support non-existent, I began the renovation journey completely alone. My first month was a crash course in construction realities. I spent 14-hour days hauling out decades of accumulated garbage scraping pigeon droppings with a putty knife and learning that YouTube videos about plumbing repair don't prepare you for the moment when you accidentally flood your future kitchen. My daily routine became a carefully orchestrated survival plan. Every morning at 5 o'clock, I would arrive at the property with a thermos of coffee and whatever leftover pizza remained from the previous night's dinner. I worked until darkness made progress impossible, usually around 9 or 10 in the evening. My social life disappeared completely as I dedicated every waking moment to the project. The financial reality hit harder than I had anticipated. Structural reinforcement alone consumed $40,000 after an engineer's report revealed that the roof needed additional support beams to handle the weight of modern appliances and furniture. Bringing the electrical system up to current building codes cost $25,000, while new plumbing required another $15,000. My inheritance was disappearing at an alarming rate. To survive, I took part-time consulting work with my former engineering colleagues, designing small mechanical systems for local businesses. The consulting barely covered my basic living expenses, which had been reduced to ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and sleeping on an air mattress in the unfinished space. But 3 months into the renovation, I made a discovery that changed everything. While removing old drywall from what would become the master bedroom, my crowbar hit something solid behind the wall. After carefully cutting away more material, I discovered a hidden compartment containing rolled architectural blueprints wrapped in plastic. The plans were dated 1987 and signed by Marcus Williams, my grandfather. The blueprints were incredibly detailed and professional, showing exactly how this rooftop space could be converted into a luxury penthouse. Every room layout, electrical placement, plumbing route, and structural modification was meticulously planned. The drawings included specifications for premium materials, custom millwork, and design elements that would have cost thousands of dollars in architectural fees. My grandfather had envisioned this exact transformation 35 years earlier, but for reasons I couldn't understand, he had abandoned the project before starting construction. Over the following 18 months, I taught myself skills that typically require years of professional training. I mastered tile installation through trial and error, learning that bathroom floors need to be perfectly level or water pools in corners. Cabinet installation became second nature after building and rebuilding the kitchen 3 times to achieve professional quality results. I studied interior design principles, color theory, and space optimization techniques that maximized every square foot. My engineering background proved invaluable for solving complex structural challenges. When I wanted to create an open-concept living area, I calculated load distributions to determine which walls could be safely removed. Installing floor-to-ceiling windows required precise measurements and custom framing that I designed myself. I became a master at finding deals and bartering services. Demolition sites provided reclaimed hardwood flooring at a fraction of retail cost. I negotiated with suppliers for bulk discounts on materials, often helping them with small engineering problems in exchange for better prices. Local tradespeople became my teachers, and occasional collaborators sharing expertise in exchange for consulting work on their own projects. My friend Jake, an electrician I had met during my consulting work, became my unofficial mentor and safety supervisor. He taught me proper wiring techniques and ensured I didn't electrocute myself during the electrical upgrade. Jake's patient instruction saved me thousands in contractor fees while keeping me safe. But despite the incredible progress, my family remained completely indifferent to the transformation. At Christmas dinner that year, I brought printed photographs showing the renovation progress. The space had evolved from a disaster zone into a recognizable living area with new flooring, functional plumbing, and safe electrical systems. I proudly passed the photos around the table, hoping for some acknowledgement of my hard work. Daniel barely glanced at the images before passing them along. "Still looks like a construction site to me," he commented while checking his phone messages. Amanda took a longer look, but remained unimpressed. "Christopher, you should have bought something move-in ready, instead of creating all this work for yourself. Time is money in real estate." My parents exchanged glances that clearly communicated their continued disappointment in my choices. When I tried to explain the engineering challenges I had overcome, they quickly changed the subject to Daniel's recent purchase of a vacation home in Bend. But as I drove home from that Christmas dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that my grandfather's abandoned blueprints represented more than just coincidence. Why had Marcus planned this exact renovation, but never started construction? What had stopped him from completing his vision? 6 months later, I found the answer in county records while researching building permits. Marcus's original construction loan documents were still on file, showing he had secured financing for the Penthouse conversion in 1987. The loan had never been discharged, technically making the original project a family venture that was abandoned but never legally dissolved. More disturbing, the loan application listed all 4 of his children as intended beneficiaries of the completed property. My grandfather hadn't abandoned his dream by choice. Something or someone had forced him to stop. By the spring of my 3rd year, the transformation was finally complete, and the results exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. The space had evolved into something that belonged in an architectural magazine. Rich hardwood floors flowed seamlessly throughout the open-concept living area, reflecting natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased Portland's skyline. The kitchen featured custom maple cabinetry with soft close drawers, granite countertops, and stainless steel appliances that I had installed myself after watching countless instructional videos. The master suite included a walk-in closet with built-in organizers and a bathroom with marble tile work that had taken me 6 weeks to complete perfectly. But the crown jewel was the rooftop garden terrace I had created by waterproofing and reinforcing the building's roof structure. Outdoor furniture surrounded planters filled with native Oregon plants, creating an urban oasis with panoramic views of the city river and mountains. The transformation attracted attention from Portland's design community almost immediately. Sarah Martinez, a photographer for Pacific Northwest Architecture magazine, contacted me after seeing social media posts about the renovation. Her photo shoot resulted in a 6-page feature article titled, "Portland's Most Dramatic Urban Renovation Engineer Transforms Rooftop Disaster into Luxury Penthouse." The magazine exposure changed my professional life overnight. My consulting business exploded, as property developers sought my expertise for challenging renovation projects. I was invited to speak at industry conferences about innovative space utilization and cost-effective luxury upgrades. Local television stations featured my story as an example of individual determination and creative problem-solving. Within 6 months of the magazine article, my annual income had jumped from $35,000 to $180,000. I was booked solid with consulting contracts, speaking engagements, and renovation design projects throughout the Pacific Northwest. But the biggest shock came when I commissioned a professional property appraisal for insurance purposes. The appraiser, Janet Coleman, spent 4 hours measuring, photographing, and documenting every detail of the penthouse. When she delivered her report 2 weeks later, I had to read the final valuation 3 times to believe it. $3,200,000. My $160,000 disaster had become one of Portland's most valuable residential properties. The renovation had added over $3 million in value, representing a 2,000% return on my initial investment. For the first time in 3 years, I felt genuinely proud of what I had accomplished. But that pride was short-lived. News of the appraisal reached my family through Amanda's real estate network faster than I could have imagined. Suddenly, my phone started ringing constantly with calls from relatives who had ignored me for 3 years. My father called daily, suggesting I move back to the family home to save money on living expenses. My mother offered to help redecorate the penthouse despite having never shown interest in my design choices before. Daniel proposed creating a family investment partnership that would maximize everyone's financial benefit. Amanda wanted to list the property immediately and split the proceeds as a family investment. The sudden attention felt overwhelming and artificial. These were the same people who had mocked my purchase, refused to help with renovation, and showed no interest in my progress for 3 years. Now they were calling, constantly visiting unannounced, and offering advice about my financial future. But the most disturbing conversation came from my uncle Frank. He arrived at the penthouse on a Saturday morning without warning, carrying a folder of documents and wearing the serious expression I remembered from childhood when adults discussed important family business. "Christopher, we need to talk about your grandfather's intentions." Frank announced, settling into my living room as if he owned the place. "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely confused by his sudden interest in Marcus's memory. Frank opened his folder and spread several documents across my coffee table. Building permits, architectural drawings, and legal papers I had never seen before. "We always knew about Marcus's original plans for this place," Frank admitted. "We've been tracking your progress through building permit records and property assessments. We kept quiet, hoping you would fail so the family could buy this property cheap and complete Marcus's vision ourselves." The casual cruelty of that admission hit me like a physical blow. My own family had been watching me struggle for 3 years, hoping I would fail so they could profit from my failure. "But since you succeeded," Frank continued, "we need to discuss the family trust provisions that Marcus established." He handed me a photocopy of a legal document that made my blood run cold. "This is a copy of your grandfather's original will from 1987, Frank explained. "It contains a clause stating that any family member who completes his unfinished penthouse project would trigger a provision in the family trust. The clause gives other family members the right of first refusal to purchase the completed property at original investment cost plus 10% annually." I scanned the document with growing horror. The legal language was complex, but the basic meaning was clear. If I had completed Marcus's penthouse project, my family could force me to sell the property to them for approximately $280,000, regardless of its current market value. They could legally steal my $3 million penthouse for less than $300,000. That brings me back to the rainy Tuesday morning when the letter of intent arrived. The legal document was even more threatening than Frank's verbal warning had suggested. It demanded I transfer ownership to the family trust within 30 days or face immediate litigation. Every family member except me had signed the letter, and it bore the letterhead of Brennan Walsh and Associates, a law firm known for aggressive tactics in estate disputes. My hands shook as I read the demand letter's clinical language describing my life's work as family property improvements that triggered ancestral trust provisions. The letter claimed I had unlawfully enhanced family assets and demanded immediate restoration of trust property to rightful beneficiaries. I immediately called Lisa Rodriguez, an attorney who specialized in estate law and had been recommended by Jake's brother-in-law. Lisa's initial consultation was both encouraging and terrifying. The 1987 will clause is legally questionable, Lisa explained during our first meeting. Marcus's will was written when this property didn't even exist as residential space. The completion clause was never properly defined in legal terms. Additionally, you used your grandmother's inheritance money, not family trust funds, for the renovation. But she also delivered sobering news about the battle ahead. Your family has hired an expensive firm known for grinding opponents into submission through prolonged litigation. They'll file motion after motion demanding property preservation orders, financial audits, and construction assessments. Even if we ultimately win, they can make your life miserable for years. The family's pressure campaign began immediately and intensified daily. My father called every morning at 6 o'clock sobbing about family loyalty and begging me to honor grandfather's memory by surrendering the penthouse. My mother left voicemail messages describing how disappointed Marcus would be if he knew I was destroying family unity over money. Daniel used his legal connections to threaten my business relationships, calling my consulting clients to suggest they might face liability issues if they continued working with someone involved in family property disputes. 3 clients canceled contracts within a week, costing me approximately $30,000 in immediate income. Amanda proved even more ruthless, spreading rumors throughout Portland's real estate community about my selfishness and greed. She told colleagues I had stolen a family property and was exploiting my grandfather's death for personal gain. The gossip campaign damaged my reputation with potential clients who began viewing me as someone embroiled in messy family drama. Uncle Frank used his construction industry connections to block building permits for my other renovation projects. City inspectors suddenly began finding code violations and safety concerns that had never been issues before. 2 major consulting contracts were delayed indefinitely when permit approvals mysteriously stalled in bureaucratic review processes. But the most devastating blow was the legal injunctions the family filed to prevent me from selling refinancing or making any further improvements to the penthouse. They claimed I was depleting family assets and demanded immediate property preservation orders that froze my ability to access the equity I had created through 3 years of hard work. My consulting business suffered as clients became wary of legal entanglements. Income dropped from $15,000 per month to less than $4,000 as contracts dried up and new projects disappeared. I was forced to take out personal loans to cover basic living expenses while legal fees consumed my remaining savings. The family organized gatherings and holidays but pointedly excluded me. They told extended relatives, cousins, and family friends that I had stolen grandfather's project and was destroying family unity through greed and selfishness. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years began calling to beg me to do the right thing and honor Marcus's memory. Aunt Carol, Marcus's daughter-in-law, called crying about how the dispute was tearing the family apart. Cousin Stephen, whom I had barely seen since childhood, sent long text messages about family values and loyalty to our ancestors. Even elderly relatives from back east weighed in with phone calls urging me to be the bigger person and put family first. The coordinated campaign was clearly orchestrated to isolate me emotionally and financially until I surrendered just to make the pressure stop. But I refused to give up the property I had transformed through 3 years of exhausting work. The breaking point came during a heated confrontation at Daniel's law office, where the family had summoned me for what they called a final negotiation session. All four siblings sat around Daniel's conference table with folders of documents and expressions of righteous indignation. They had prepared charts showing how the penthouse proceeds would be divided among family members, with each person receiving approximately $640,000 after selling the property for its appraised value. This was never about honoring grandfather's legacy. I realized aloud as I studied their financial projections. You never cared about Marcus's vision for this property. You just want to sell it immediately and split the money. My father's mask of paternal concern finally slipped. Christopher, you're 28 years old with no family of your own. What do you need a $3 million penthouse for? The rest of us have children to support, mortgages to pay, college funds to fill. We're not asking you to walk away empty-handed, Amanda added. You'd get your share too. $600,000 is more money than you've ever seen. Plus, Daniel concluded, fighting this in court will cost you everything. We have better lawyers and deeper pockets. Even if you somehow win, you'll be bankrupt from legal fees. As I sat in that conference room listening to my family casually discuss carving up my life's work like a Thanksgiving turkey, I finally understood what had happened to Marcus 35 years earlier. He had faced this same greed, this same pressure, this same family betrayal. That's why he had abandoned his penthouse project. But unlike my grandfather, I had one crucial advantage. I knew the truth was still hidden somewhere in the legal system. That evening, I spent 6 hours at the county clerk's office, searching through decades of filing records for any additional documents related to Marcus's estate. Most attorneys and families never bother searching beyond the initial probate filings, but my engineering background had taught me that the most important information is often buried in technical details that others overlook. Just before the office closed at 8 o'clock, I found what I was looking for in a misfiled folder labeled Probate Corrections 1989. A second will, dated 2 years after the first one, written in Marcus's own handwriting and properly witnessed by 2 neighbors. This will explicitly revoke the family trust clause and included a provision that made my blood run cold. Having observed my children's greed and lack of character over the past 2 years, I hereby revoke all previous provisions regarding the penthouse project. Furthermore, if any member of my family attempts to claim ownership of my unfinished project through legal action or coercion, they shall forfeit all rights to my estate and receive nothing. I have grown disgusted with their money-focused attitudes and hope that someone with integrity will complete what I started. Marcus had known exactly what his family would do, and he had prepared the perfect defense. The 1989 will was a legal nuclear weapon that completely destroyed my family's case. Not only did it revoke the family trust clause they were using to steal my property, but it contained language that would strip them of any inheritance rights if they attempted exactly what they were currently doing. Lisa Rodriguez nearly dropped her coffee when I showed her the document the next morning. Christopher, this changes everything, she said, studying the handwritten pages with growing excitement. If we can authenticate this will and get it properly probated, your family doesn't just lose their claim to your penthouse. They lose everything Marcus left them. We immediately filed counter-litigation, seeking to probate the 1989 will while simultaneously claiming the family's demand letter constituted attempted theft through legal coercion. Lisa also subpoenaed records from the private investigation firm the family had hired, discovering they had been monitoring my property improvements for over 2 years. They've been planning this takeover since you started making real progress, Lisa explained as we reviewed surveillance reports and photographs. This wasn't a spontaneous reaction to your success. It was a premeditated conspiracy to steal your property once you had increased its value. The evidence of planning was overwhelming. The private investigators had taken monthly photographs of the renovation progress, calculated square footage increases, and estimated property value appreciation. The family had been tracking my every improvement, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But we needed more than just legal documents to win this battle. We needed witnesses who could testify about Marcus's true character and intentions. I contacted Sharon Peterson, the real estate agent who had originally shown me the property. Sharon remembered Marcus's visit in vivid detail, particularly his comments about family problems. "Your grandfather seemed really troubled during that visit," Sharon recalled during our interview. "He kept talking about how his family only cared about money and inheritance. He said he hoped someone worthy would eventually complete his vision, but he was worried his children would just sell it for profit." Sharon agreed to provide sworn testimony about Marcus's concerns regarding family greed and his specific hope that someone with integrity would complete the Penthouse project. Jake the electrician and other tradespeople who had worked with me also rallied to provide character testimony. They described my dedication, work ethic, and respect for Marcus's original architectural vision. Their testimony would prove I had honored the spirit of Marcus's project, not exploited it. The media strategy proved equally effective. I granted interviews to the Oregonian and Portland Business Journal about family greed versus individual achievement. The story resonated powerfully with local audiences as a classic tale of hard-working young person versus entitled relatives. "Family tries to steal engineer's dream home" became the Portland Tribune's front page headline. Social media exploded with support for my situation, with hashtags like "Stand with Christopher" and "Earned Not Inherited" trending locally. The public clearly sympathized with someone who had built something beautiful through hard work rather than family connections. My consulting clients rallied behind me as well, providing character testimonials and new business referrals, despite the ongoing legal drama. The community support demonstrated that people respected genuine achievement over family politics. But the family escalated their tactics as they realized their legal position was crumbling. Desperate to force a quick resolution before the 1989 will could be properly probated, they hired a security company to monitor my building, creating harassment complaints with the police. They also contacted my consulting clients, directly claiming I was mentally unstable and involved in dangerous family conflicts that might affect my work quality. This strategy backfired completely when clients reported these harassment calls to me, providing additional evidence of the family's malicious campaign. The psychological pressure was enormous. I stopped eating regular meals, suffered chronic insomnia, and lost 15 pounds from stress. Some mornings I could barely force myself to get out of bed, overwhelmed by the constant legal battles and family attacks. During one particularly dark evening, I actually considered accepting the family's latest settlement offer of $500,000 just to make the nightmare stop. The money would let me start over somewhere else, away from the family drama and legal complications. But that night, while organizing legal documents for Lisa, I discovered something that changed my perspective completely. Hidden in the courthouse filing boxes was Marcus's personal journal from 1988 and 1989. The leather-bound notebook contained daily entries detailing his growing awareness of his family's greed and his specific thoughts about me. "Christopher is the only one who builds things instead of just taking them," Marcus had written. "Helen tells me he's studying engineering and wants to create something meaningful with his life. If anyone could complete my penthouse vision with integrity, it would be Helen's grandson. He has the character the others lack." Reading my grandfather's private thoughts about my potential brought tears to my eyes. Marcus had specifically hoped I would find his project and complete it with the same integrity he had tried to bring to his work. The journal entries also revealed the full extent of his family's pressure campaign 35 years earlier. My father and siblings had demanded he liquidate the penthouse investment to fund their immediate financial needs. They had threatened to cut off contact with their grandchildren if he didn't prioritize their wants over his dreams. Marcus had chosen family peace over personal vision, abandoning his project to satisfy their demands. But he had never forgiven them for forcing that choice. and he had spent his final years ensuring they couldn't do the same thing to anyone else. I was not going to let them win this time. The probate hearing became a media spectacle that drew attention from legal professionals throughout Oregon. The courtroom was packed with journalists, real estate professionals, and curious observers who had followed the story through local news coverage. My family arrived with 3 expensive attorneys from Brennan Walsh & Associates, presenting themselves as grieving relatives protecting sacred family legacy. They wore somber black clothing and carried thick folders of documents intended to demonstrate their deep connection to Marcus's memory. I arrived with Lisa Rodriguez and a simple cardboard box containing Marcus's journal construction photographs from my renovation and testimony from people who had actually known my grandfather's character. The family's testimony was polished but ultimately hollow. Each sibling spoke eloquently about their profound love for Marcus and their shared sacrifice in maintaining family property values. They presented themselves as responsible stewards, protecting ancestral assets from an ungrateful younger generation. My father delivered an Oscar-worthy performance complete with tears and voice trembling with emotion. Marcus would be heartbroken to see how Christopher has divided this family, he declared. All we want is to honor our father's legacy and ensure his vision benefits everyone he loved. Daniel presented legal arguments about trust law and fiduciary responsibility, claiming the family had a moral obligation to protect Marcus's estate from individual exploitation. Amanda testified about real estate market conditions and property values, suggesting I lacked the expertise to manage such valuable assets responsibly. Uncle Frank described his close relationship with Marcus and his intimate knowledge of the original Penthouse plans, implying he was the natural choice to oversee the property's future. For 3 hours, I listened to my family rewrite history, painting themselves as loving relatives, protecting family values against a selfish younger generation. Their performance was so convincing that I worried the judge might actually believe their version of events. But cross-examination revealed the truth beneath their polished presentations. Lisa Rodriguez methodically exposed the contradictions in their testimony. None of them had spoken to Marcus during his final 2 years of life. None had visited him in the assisted living facility. None had attended his memorial service, except to hear the will reading. "Mr. Williams?" Lisa asked my father, "When was the last time you had a meaningful conversation with your father about his dreams or aspirations?" Robert's confident demeanor cracked as he struggled to answer. "Well, we talked about many things over the years. I'm asking for a specific date, Mr. Williams. When did you last discuss his penthouse project with him?" "In Mantioki met Benu Jackbarnim. It would have been... We didn't really discuss that particular project much." The truth emerged slowly and painfully. My family had effectively estranged themselves from Marcus years before his death, maintaining minimal contact and showing no interest in his projects, dreams, or daily life. When it was my turn to present evidence, I began with Marcus's journal entries describing his disappointment with his children's greed and his specific hope that I would complete his vision. Marcus wrote these words just 2 years before his death. I testified reading directly from his handwritten pages. "Christopher has integrity the others lack. If anyone could honor my penthouse vision, it would be Helen's grandson." I presented construction photographs showing how I had followed Marcus's original blueprints while adding modern engineering improvements. Every renovation decision had honored his architectural intent, while incorporating updated safety standards and efficiency upgrades. Jake testified about my dedication and craftsmanship during the 3-year transformation. Mrs. Hoffman described my respectful treatment during property negotiations and my obvious love for the renovation project. Sharon Peterson confirmed Marcus's concerns about family greed and his hope for a worthy successor. But the most damaging revelation came when Lisa presented surveillance evidence showing the family's private investigators had been illegally entering my building during construction. Security camera footage from neighboring buildings clearly showed people with keys accessing my property at night, taking photographs and measurements without permission. The invasion had been systematic and ongoing, providing evidence for their premeditated conspiracy. Under aggressive cross-examination, Daniel's composure finally cracked completely. "Isn't it true that your family planned to sell this property immediately upon taking possession?" Lisa demanded. We discussed various options for maximizing the family benefit. "Mr. Williams, I'm not asking about family benefit. I'm asking if you plan to sell this property for $3.2 million and divide the proceeds among yourselves." Daniel glanced desperately at his attorney before answering. "That was one possibility we considered, yes." "So you never intended to honor your grandfather's vision or maintain this as family property?" "Our primary concern was ensuring fair distribution of family assets." Amanda's testimony proved even more damaging when she admitted the family had never intended to preserve Marcus's architectural legacy. "The property would have been sold to maximize our return on investment," she stated matter-of-factly. "Real estate is about financial performance, not sentimental attachment." Uncle Frank's testimony provided the final nail in their legal coffin. Under oath, he admitted the family had found the 1989 will among Marcus's personal effects immediately after his death, but had deliberately chosen not to probate it. "We hoped Christopher would fail," Frank confessed. "If the renovation had been unsuccessful, we could have purchased the property cheaply and completed Marcus's project ourselves." "So you knew about the second will for 4 years but chose to hide it from your nephew?" Lisa pressed. "We believe the family's collective interests outweighed individual claims." The judge's expression grew increasingly stern as the extent of their deception became clear. But the final bombshell came when Lisa revealed that the family's attorney had known about the 1989 will from the beginning. "Your Honor," Lisa announced, defense counsel was provided a copy of the second will during initial discovery, but advised his clients to proceed with litigation anyway, believing Christopher couldn't afford prolonged legal battles. The judge immediately called both legal teams to the bench for a private conference that lasted 20 minutes. When they returned, the defense attorney's face was pale, and my family looked devastated. The family's case had not only failed completely, but their attorney now faced disciplinary action for deliberately concealing evidence and advising clients to pursue litigation they knew was fraudulent. "This court finds clear evidence of bad faith litigation and attempted property theft," the judge declared. "The 1989 will is hereby validated, and Mr. Christopher Williams is confirmed as the rightful owner of the Penthouse property. Furthermore, the family's legal costs and damages will be paid from their inheritance as specified in Marcus Williams' final will." Justice had been served, but the cost to family relationships was total and irreversible. The judge's ruling was swift and comprehensive. The 1989 will was validated and properly probated, confirming my complete ownership of the penthouse and stripping my family of their inheritance rights due to their attempted theft. But beyond legal vindication, the court ordered my family to pay $180,000 in damages for harassment, business interference, and legal fees. The money represented exactly what I had invested in the original property purchase, creating a perfect circle of financial justice. The individual consequences for each family member were severe and long-lasting. My father, Robert, lost his standing in the local Rotary Club and community organizations when news of the court ruling spread through Beaverton social circles. Friends and neighbors who had respected him for decades now viewed him as someone who had tried to steal from his own son. My mother, Patricia, faced similar social ostracism at her bank job, where colleagues whispered about the family scandal and questioned her character. The woman who had prided herself on financial conservatism was now known as someone who had supported an attempted theft of family property. Daniel's legal practice suffered immediate and lasting damage when the Oregon State Bar launched ethics investigations into his conduct during the litigation. Several clients terminated their relationships with his firm, citing concerns about his professional judgment and family conflicts. His partnership at the prestigious downtown firm was quietly dissolved 6 months later. Amanda's real estate license faced formal review by the Oregon Real Estate Agency for spreading false information about me to industry colleagues. Her reputation in Portland's real estate community was permanently damaged, and several major clients moved their business to competitors who had supported my situation publicly. Uncle Frank's construction company lost 3 major city contracts when municipal officials learned about his role in the conspiracy. His reputation for integrity, built over 30 years of business relationships, was destroyed by his admission that he had deliberately sabotaged my building permits and hoped for my failure. But the most satisfying consequence was watching them face the community judgment they had tried to avoid. Portland's tight-knit professional community rallied around me as an example of individual achievement, triumphing over family entitlement. The story became a cautionary tale about greed destroying family relationships. Meanwhile, my consulting business exploded with new opportunities as the publicity attracted national attention to my renovation skills and personal integrity. Architectural Digest featured the Penthouse in a 12-page spread about visionary urban transformations. HGTV contacted me about hosting a renovation television show focused on challenging urban properties. Home improvement conferences throughout the country invited me to speak about space optimization, structural engineering, and the psychology of major renovation projects. My consulting rates tripled as property developers sought my expertise for their most challenging projects. But the most meaningful recognition came from the American Institute of Architects, which awarded me their Young Professional Achievement Award for demonstrating exceptional vision skill and perseverance in transforming abandoned urban space into architectural excellence. Rather than selling the penthouse and moving away from the painful family memories, I decided to keep the property as my home and professional headquarters. I converted one bedroom into a design studio, where I meet with consulting clients and develop renovation plans for their projects. The rooftop terrace became my favorite space for morning coffee and evening reflection. Standing among the plants I had cultivated looking out over Portland's skyline toward Mount Hood, I often thought about how Marcus's abandoned dream had become the foundation for my own success story. With part of the legal settlement money, I established the Helen Williams Memorial Scholarship for young engineers at Oregon State University. The scholarship honors my grandmother's belief in building things, rather than just taking them, providing financial support for students who demonstrate creativity, integrity, and determination in their academic work. The scholarship announcement attracted positive media attention and demonstrated that I was using my success to benefit others, rather than simply accumulating wealth. The gesture helped heal some of the emotional wounds from the family battle, while honoring the woman whose inheritance had made everything possible. My personal life flourished as well. Sarah Martinez, the architectural photographer who had documented my penthouse transformation, became a close friend and eventually my romantic partner. Our relationship built on shared values of creativity, hard work, and integrity rather than financial expectations or family obligations. Sarah's artistic perspective helped me see my own work differently. She showed me how the penthouse represented more than just successful renovation. It was a physical manifestation of perseverance, vision, and individual determination overcoming family obstacles. Together, we began planning additional renovation projects that would combine my engineering expertise with her artistic documentation. Our professional collaboration evolved naturally into personal partnership as we discovered we shared similar dreams about creating beautiful spaces and meaningful work. The family relationships remained permanently severed, which was initially painful but ultimately liberating. I realized that biological connections mean nothing without mutual respect, support, and genuine love. My chosen family of friends, mentors, colleagues, and Sarah provided more authentic relationships than my blood relatives ever had. Occasionally, I would receive indirect messages through mutual acquaintances suggesting various family members wanted to reconcile or move past our differences. But I learned that forgiveness doesn't require resuming harmful relationships. I forgave them for my own peace of mind while maintaining healthy boundaries that protected my future. The penthouse itself became a symbol of personal transformation that extended far beyond physical renovation. Every custom detail from the hardwood floors I had installed myself to the rooftop garden I had designed and planted represented months of learning, growing, and pushing through challenges that had seemed impossible. Standing on my rooftop terrace during Portland's spectacular sunsets, watching the city lights begin to twinkle across the Willamette River Valley, I often reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. Marcus's abandoned dream had become the catalyst for my own success, teaching me that the most meaningful achievements come from pursuing your vision despite opposition from people who should support you most. The experience taught me that family isn't about shared genetics or inherited obligations, but about people who celebrate your successes, support your dreams, and stand by you during difficult times. My chosen family of friends, mentors, and colleagues had provided more genuine love and encouragement than my biological relatives ever had. Most importantly, I learned that the greatest inheritance isn't money or property, but the courage to pursue your own vision, the wisdom to recognize genuine relationships, and the strength to create your own legacy rather than simply accepting what others think you deserve. The penthouse stands today as a testament to individual determination, engineering skill, and the power of completing what previous generations started but couldn't finish. Every morning when I wake up in the master bedroom, I designed and built myself surrounded by the panoramic views of Portland's skyline. I'm reminded that the most satisfying achievements are those you create through your own hard work, vision, and refusal to give up when others doubt your dreams. Marcus's architectural blueprints still hang framed in my design studio, not as a shrine to the past, but as inspiration for future projects. His vision provided the foundation, but the completed penthouse reflects my own engineering expertise, aesthetic choices, and 3 years of exhausting but ultimately rewarding work. The story became a reminder that sometimes the most important inheritance is the opportunity to prove yourself, the chance to transform abandoned dreams into personal achievement, and the wisdom that comes from learning who truly supports your success versus who simply wants to share in its benefits. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where family members tried to take credit for your hard work or claim ownership of something you built yourself? How did you handle people who mocked your dreams but wanted to benefit from your success? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let me know if you think I made the right choice in fighting for what I had earned rather than giving in to family pressure. If this story inspired you to pursue your own vision despite opposition, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming challenges and achieving success through determination and hard work. Share this video with anyone who needs encouragement to stand up for their dreams, and remember that the most meaningful achievements are always those you create yourself through persistent skill and refusing to give up when others doubt your potential. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it encourages you to pursue your own dreams with confidence, knowing that authentic success comes from your own efforts rather than family connections or inherited advantages. Keep building something beautiful with your life, and never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve what you've earned through your own hard work and vision.